The first day of Assistant Generals was mad fun, and we all had a crazy time. But, as expected, Evony came in and pulled the plug on that very quickly. So, now that we've had some time to sober up, we've started to take a proper look at the Assistant General system. So, that's what we're going to cover here, and I also have a special message at the end of this video. Hi, and welcome to Red Evony. I am Akayasha, you can call me Aka. Now that we've had a few days to try our hand at the Assistant General system, here are 3 points that basically summarize what we know about the Assistant General system now. The first one is that the buffs from the special skill, skill books, and specialties of the Assistant General apply. But because doing specialties is very hard and also very expensive, the selection of Assistant Generals is going to be primarily limited to the general special skill and the skill books. Those two. If you can afford to do specialties on your Assistant General, then you can consider specialties when making your selections. The next thing that we know is regarding how skill books work in the Assistant General system. The simplest way that I know right now to explain it is that think of your main general having 6 skill book slots as opposed to 3. The same rules that apply for skill books previously still apply now. If you have a general that couldn't take a skill book, from all indications, you still won't be able to use that skill book with that general as a main, even if you add an assistant to it. Based on all the testing I've done so far, that's my conclusion. If you have any information to the contrary, please feel free to drop a comment down below. The other thing is that it is possible to change skill books on your main general to accommodate an assistant general. As an example, I have Hannibal as my main general here. I tried putting on Robert Giscard as an assistant. Sorry if I'm getting the name wrong. I couldn't use Giscard as an assistant to Hannibal because Hannibal had the level 4 mounted attack book. I took that book off and Giscard is now able to be used as an assistant with Hannibal. There are 2 things that you need to keep in mind when considering switching books on your main general. The first thing is that switching books on your main general essentially means that your main general cannot function the way it's supposed to be without the assistant. To get the full potential of your main general, once you switch the books, you would always have to include the assistant with that general. At this point, I'm not entirely sure whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but when it comes to assistant generals, I'm going to be following a very simple rule, and that is my main general should be able to function the way it was intended to, even without the assistant general. The assistant, in the literal sense of the word, has to assist my main. It should not change my main in any way. So that's one thing. The other thing you need to keep in mind when considering switching books on your main general is that you need to make sure that the book you are taking off your main general, you can actually put on the assistant. In the example I was showing earlier, I took the book of Hannibal. It allowed me to put Giscard as an assistant, but to my surprise, Giscard couldn't take the level 4 mounted attack book. So it was back to the drawing board looking for an assistant for Hannibal. The third and final summary point that we have is that generals that require dragons for you to maximize their special skill probably do not make good assistant generals. So we're talking about generals like Martinus, Electra, Ulysses S. Grant. These guys require dragons for you to use the full potential of their skill, and putting them as an assistant means that all the other benefits of having a dragon, the refines, the special skills of the dragon's talents, the dragon's attributes, none of those would apply. They would essentially be wasted if you put them on an assistant general. So these generals that require dragons would not make good assistants in my opinion. If you have one of those generals, it is best for you to use them as a main and find another assistant to work with them. So now that we've gone through those points, let's move on to look at some assistant general combinations. The first set that we're going to look at is regarding gathering. And when it comes to gathering, we're going to break them up into two different groups. The first one is regarding resource boost. The second one is regarding speed boost. For resource boost, I'm sure at this point, a lot of you have seen this combination. Having a general like Queen Jindeok or Constance, and then having Shimazu Yoshihiro as an assistant. Shimazu is a general that is very good for food gathering, so this combination is exceptionally good for when you are gathering food. Unfortunately, I haven't seen any similar combination for any of the other resource types, but if you have any information to add to that, please drop a comment down below. The next thing that we're looking at is the speed boost. The best combination that I've seen so far is combining Queen Jindeok with Princess Lucy. This gives a considerable boost to your gathering speed and will help you clear those tiles quicker. The best way that I've seen so far to use this combination is when you are sending them to the Alliance tile. This increases the speed of gathering in the Alliance tile and in turn, the amount of resources you get in a fixed period of time. That's the best way I've found to use that combination. In terms of skill books, the regular gathering books apply. So Food Gatherer, Stone Gatherer, Lumber Gatherer, Ore Gatherer, all of those still apply. You could also add books like Troop Load or March Speed to your Assistant General to help with your gathering game. Next, let's have a look at PvP generals. And before we get right into it, I just want to say it up front that if you've been watching my videos for any period of time, you've probably noticed that I don't coin all that much. So I do not have an array of premium generals to put on display. I have what I have. I have what's available in the game, and for the most part, those are the kind of combinations that I'm going to be showing you. So I'll take you through my picks for each of the PvP generals that I have, and hopefully that can help you with your selection process when you are choosing your combinations for your generals. Okay, now that that's out of the way, the first PvP general I'm going to show you guys is my Archer General. I use Himiko as my PvP Archer General, and I tried out a lot of combinations trying to find out an assistant with her. I tried Himiko and Minamoto, that didn't work. I tried Himiko and Electra, that didn't work either. I tried out Winfield Scott, he didn't work either. I even tried out Edward the Black Prince, no luck for Aka on that one. So I kept testing and testing, and I finally got a few combinations that worked. The first available option that worked, Gwangetto the Great. Gwangetto gives 20% to range attack and siege attack, so he was an option. I also considered Mehmed II. Yes, Mehmed, he was an option. So all of you guys that have Mehmed and have never used him for anything, this is a time to give him a try and check him out. So Mehmed is an option. I also tried out Vladimir the Great, one of the guys that you get from Relics. He was an option as well. I tried out Suleiman the Magnificent. That was another option as well that worked. So those were the 4 options that I had available to me. And after consideration, I came down to 2 choices. It was between Gwangetto the Great and Suleiman the Magnificent. As I said earlier, Gwangetto gives 20% to range attack and siege attack. Suleiman the Magnificent gives 15% to range attack and siege attack, plus 10% debuff to defense for all troops. After thinking about it, I didn't really come down to a clear favorite, so I decided to go with Suleiman the Magnificent for now. For the time being, that's the combination I'm going with. In terms of books, the books I have on Himiko, I have range troop attack, range troop range bonus, and range troop defense. The books I put on Suleiman are range troop HP, march size, and then I kind of got stuck because I have used up all the range books that are available in the game, but I still have 1 slot left. So I started thinking, okay, what can I do? And then I decided to go back and look at some of my PvP reports and see which of my troop types do the most damage for me besides my main troop type. After looking at it, it turned out that my protective layer, the mounted troops in my PvP march, were getting the most kills, so I decided to buff my protective layer. And the final book, I added mounted troop HP. So, for the time being, This is the combination that I'm going with for PvP range. Next up, ground PvP. I use Trajan as my PvP general for ground, and I'll be honest, I didn't really do much checking when it came to ground PvP. And that's simply because the first general that I had in mind as my first choice for an assistant with Trajan worked. So that was great. That was perfect for me. I didn't have to do much other searching, and I slapped him on there, and that was that. So as an assistant for Trajan, I have Yui. Out of all the generals I had available, Yui was my first choice, and he works fine, and that's what I'm going with. Yui gives 25% to ground troop attack and mounted troop attack, and 10% to ground troop HP and mounted troop HP. In terms of books, on my Trajan, I have ground troop attack, ground troop defense, and ground troop HP. On Yui, I have ground troop speed, march size, and then I encountered the same problem. I've used up all the ground books and I still have one slot. So I did the exact same thing, went through old reports, discovered that my protective layer was getting the most kills, so I decided to buff my protective layer, which was ranged troops. So on the final slot for Yui, I have ranged troop attack. So that's my combination for ground PvP. Next up, mounted PvP. For mounted PvP, I use Hannibal, and no jokes, Hannibal is a very picky general when it comes to assistants. I mean, seriously, I tried so many combinations. I tried Martinus didn't work. I tried Roland, no go with Roland. As I mentioned earlier, I tried Giscard didn't fly. I tried Barbarossa didn't work either. And I tried several other combinations that didn't work. And I was almost at wit's end until I finally found an assistant general for Hannibal. Yes, my long search for an assistant that met my criteria finally paid off. So, as an assistant for Hannibal, I have Takeda Shingen. Yes, Takeda is my assistant general that I'm going with. Takeda gives 20% for mounted attack and ground troop attack. In terms of books, on Hannibal, I have mounted troop attack, mounted troop defense, and mounted troop HP. On Takeda, I have mounted troop speed, march size. And then the same problem again with the 6th slot. Unfortunately, after checking, I didn't really have as clear an option as I did for the other two generals. So I just decided to put range troop attack on there until I can come up with something better. That's the combination I have for mounted PvP. When looking at general combinations, it is important that you focus on the generals that you have available to you. Work with what you've got. It might take some time, but you would likely find an assistant that works. And if all else fails, you can simply put a debuff general as an assistant. If you can't find a good general for Archer PvP, for example, you can simply come in and put someone like Andrew Jackson as an assistant. Andrew Jackson debuffs mounted troop HP, which goes well with your range general, and you can go with that. Andrew Jackson would also work for ground PvP because he debuffs ranged attack. So if you don't have a good option for ground PvP, a debuff general is also something that you can consider. For mounted PvP, you could easily pick a debuff general like Sixi and roll with that. So there are definitely options. And of course, no look at PvP generals will be complete without looking at the wall general. In my case, I have George Dewey as my wall general, and I had difficulty picking an assistant for him. And that's not because I couldn't really find a combination for him. The problem was that there were too many combinations for him. You have so many options when it comes to your wall general. You can have regular generals, you can have debuff generals. The list is almost endless when it comes to wall general. So, to help with the selection, I basically came up with 2 guidelines. The assistant should do one of 2 things. 1, increase the strengths of my wall general. So, if my wall general is good with range, the assistant could further increase that range advantage. If the wall general is good with ground, the assistant could further buff that ground advantage. So increasing the advantage you already have is one option with your wall general. The second one is filling in the gaps in your defense. So if you have weak areas for weak troops in your defense, you can bring an assistant on to fill in those gaps. I decided to go with filling in the gaps in my defense. In my situation, the biggest problems that I have with my defense is regarding ground attack. So that's ground attack buffs and ground attack debuffs. At the end of the day, I wanted an assistant general that will help me in those areas. And after looking at the options available to me, I came down to two choices. One, Yi Sun-sin. Yi Sun-sin is a good wall general. You can get him in the relics. He gives 10% troop attack to all troops and an additional 15% to ground troops and mounted troops. The second option that I had available to me, and for some of you, this might be a bit of a weird one, but Wei Qin. Wei Qin was the second option I have. Wei Qin has 15% debuff to ground troop attack and mounted troop attack, plus 15% buff to range troop attack and mounted troop attack. So after looking at these two, it basically came down to, do I want 25% buff for ground troop attack, or do I want 15% debuff to ground troop attack? I couldn't really come up with a clear answer, but for now, I have Wei Qin as my assistant for Judge Dewey. In terms of books, again, you have a wide range of choices, but on my Judge Dewey, I have range troop attack, range troop range bonus, siege range bonus. And on Wei Qin, I have ground troop attack, ground troop defense, and mounted troop HP. So this is the selection of generals and books that I have at the moment. Of course, these are not final and I could change them at any time. And also remember that if you don't have any good options for your wall general, you can very easily slap on another debuff general, again, like Andrew Jackson, and that would work perfectly fine. So those are my combinations for generals, and I already tested them out in BOC, and they seem to work quite well. Aside from that, from the opponents that we faced in BOC, I saw combinations like Martinus and Roland. I saw Scipio and Alexander the Great. I saw Simeon and Andrew Jackson. I saw Simeon and Edward the Black Prince. Aside from Battlefield, I've also seen a combination like Scipio and Elise. Don't know how well that works, but I have seen it. So I hope all the combinations and choices that I've shown in this video can help you get creative when it comes to looking at combinations for your main generals. Now, I have a special message for all of you watching. This weekend, Red Evony made it to 3,000 subscribers. And I just want to say a very big special thank you to everyone that has subscribed, everyone that watches the videos, everyone that likes, that comments. Thank you very much. You guys keep giving me the motivation to do what I'm doing, and trust I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing. So thank you very much. Aka signing out.